Hello, I'm Dr. James Bogash, expert in health and longevity and creator of Bogash Life and Balance. And today we're going to talk about the hormone melatonin, which most of you have probably heard of. And if you're like me, you generally thought of melatonin as it's produced deep in the brain in the pineal gland, and it's produced at night when we're not exposed to blue light, so white light, sunlight, ultraviolet light, because that shuts down melatonin production. But it turns out that I ended up down a rabbit hole for several hours recently when I realized that there's a lot of what's called extrapineal sources of melatonin. And it turns out that melatonin is produced in most areas of our body under exposure of far infrared light. So sunlight is our biggest source of infrared. Campfires are as well, but it really changes the game as far as what we think of. And we've known that melatonin generally, over the years, we've realized that it has not only helps with its sleep-wake cycle, it's a pretty potent antioxidant in the brain. So things like migraines and seizures it may play a role in. Certainly we found out with COVID and the immune system, it plays a very strong role in controlling the immune system. And we know that it's a pretty potent antioxidant. Did I mention it plays a big role in cancer? But it does. We know that you look at light maps of the United States, and areas with higher light exposure at night have higher rates of breast cancer. And that may or may not be melatonin related, but it certainly raises the question. But melatonin is a potent antioxidant. So what if during the day we are supposed to be out in the sun getting exposed to far infrared, which then soaks through our skin and allows all of the cells of our body produce a local melatonin, which is a potent antioxidant to protect us. And then when the sun goes down at night, we start producing it more in the brain, which helps us regulate the sleep-wake cycle and protect the brain. It's a totally different concept than what I even envisioned a month ago, without understanding that melatonin is produced everywhere. And maybe this little hormone is a lot more powerful and a lot more important than we think. And that would mean that being out in the sun, which so many of us avoid, then that is a far more powerful player. Not only does it protect us during the day, but not being exposed to the sun helps us sleep at night. What a crazy concept, but it regulates how important it is to be out in the sun daily. We've just gotten to the point, I hear so many people go, well, I can't go out in the sun because I have this or that, and yet you could argue that we're not talking about slapping on, baby oil laced with iodine here in Arizona at noon in August and laying out there for 4 hours until you can smell burning flesh. We're talking about 15-20 minutes of sun exposure every day to help regulate our sleep-wake cycle, but also potentially produce antioxidants everywhere in our body. And this just makes sense because, again, our bodies are designed to work with our environment. And there's a brilliance to that we don't really understand, but our ancestors were getting lots of sun exposure. My Irish ancestors were not hanging out at the equator, but they were certainly out in the sun all the time. And we are not anywhere near the amount of sun exposure that we had. So when people think that they're just going to take some vitamin D in lieu of sun exposure, you're missing the entire point and some of the other benefits that the sun provides. We already know that it helps generate nitric oxide, which is very healthy for the blood vessels and the immune system. And it also helps, just being exposed to the sun helps improve our gut microbiome, which is crazy. And maybe that happens through melatonin. Maybe that happens through nitric oxide. We don't really know, but sunlight exposure is well known to help build a healthy microbiome. So there's a couple references I'm going to put in this video in the description. One is just about the extrapineal sources of melatonin. The other one has to do with melatonin as a pretty potent antioxidant, but the other one has to do with tryptophan, which our body uses to make melatonin, and how much tryptophan deficiency may have played a role in COVID-19 outcomes. So, like I said, I'll put those in the description. Make sure you like this video, share it with somebody who you think needs the information, and subscribe to the channel.